Welcome, everyone, to the Whitman Finance Committee meeting for Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. It's 7 o'clock. We're in room 21 on the second floor of Town Hall. We're just going to go quickly to look at the agenda. Just some updated information from meetings that took place last night, which we'd like to get the board updated on that. But before we do, we'll just take a look at the agenda. We have meeting minutes tonight for March 12th and March 19th. They were emailed in advance. Reserve fund, I think this needs a correction.
Right, yeah.
Does anybody?
We have not changed the reserve fund for those meeting minutes.
Right, but for the
agenda.
For the agenda, I think I did the math.
Oh,
On the article, the reserve fund transfer last,
Was 11,500.
11.5, yeah.
11.5 from 35 is the new number.
11.5.
23.5.
So the correct number on this agenda should be $23,500. Okay, and that will be carried into the subsequent agendas. Public forum, there's nobody here for anything that's not on the agenda. New business. We don't have a new Article 2 we don't have a new warrant. We don't have an approved warrant. We really have very little information for us to act on tonight, just to be perfectly candid. Since we do have a new assessment that was voted by the school committee last night, we should now have an updated Article 2 to reflect a balanced budget. We do not have that. So unfortunately, as time ticks on here, we're going to be down to only 2 meetings for us to make recommendations now on all of the warrant articles and on the Article 2. So old business will cover the subcommittee reports, the discussion on the fiscal 25 budget and where we stand as of 7:07 on Tuesday night here. Communications, we have none, and the town administrator is in with the Board of Selectmen at a early start to the Selectmen's meeting, Select Board meeting tonight. So you can see our upcoming meetings. We have Tuesday, April 16th. I put on here possibly posting for Thursday, the 18th, possibly posting for Monday, the 22nd, and then we'll have April 23rd is our final opportunity to vote our recommendations to be published in the warrant. So, as you can see, we only have 2 Tuesday meetings, and we may have to. So, can everybody just check their schedules? If there's some problem with those other days of the week, let me know so we can make an alternative plan. But I'd like to just generally have a commitment from, we would hope at least in a majority, so we like to have as many finance committee members voting recommendations as possible. So I can't tell you which days which dates we'll actually be voting warrant articles, but I can say that April 23rd will be our last opportunity, and that may be a long meeting. So just keep those dates in mind, the alternate dates. Of course, for me, I need to decide if in fact we're meeting on these other dates and post at least 48 hours before that as well. So it does get a little complicated when we don't really have enough information to move forward with recommendations for town meeting. And that's where we are. So.
Sorry, Rick, I missed which dates are you considering adding? Is these the Thursday nights?
If you see the upcoming meetings at the bottom, 4/16 is a Tuesday, 4/18 is a Thursday.
Oh, they're not, okay, those are not on mine. I just have the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd on my.
Do you have the April 9th agenda in front of you?
No, I think he's
Oh,
gonna.
no, it's April 2nd. No. Still from him. Nope.
Oh, did you copy the right agenda?
I was just gonna say I must have.
Yeah, I got a second too.
Yeah, the second.
But I'm working within it.
Want to try it again?
We get it.
Out of this pile of stuff that was in front of me. Okay, so yeah, if you want to mark on your calendar those dates.
14.
So I'll just go to my high-tech planner here, and we'll look at. So right, today is the 9th, right?
Yeah.
Next Tuesday is the 16th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe the 18th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, maybe the 22nd, and definitely the 23rd,
Yeah, that's right.
right? So those are those are the tentative 4 meetings that we really need, at least 4 meetings. If we in fact have everything we need by next Tuesday, we could get this done in 4 meetings. So next Tuesday is the 16th. I would highly suggest, if we do have everything we need, we go to the 18th and then the 23rd and,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
okay, so now everybody can see those dates at the bottom.
Okay.
Yep.
And then May 6th is the
Okay.
annual town meeting.
Thank
So we have to be done the second week before the end of the month in order for enough time for printing the warrant.
Right.
So that's our drop dead meeting, really, is the 23rd.
23rd, yeah.
So, all right, everybody good with that? All right. Let's then take a look at the agenda. And perhaps we'll go to the 3:12 meeting minutes. Everybody have a copy in front of them?
Yes.
Okay, so just for information, I went through these meeting minutes. I could find not one thing to amend.
I have
But
one.
that doesn't mean that there's nothing from somebody else. But we'll start on page 681. Rosemary, did you say you reviewed these?
Yep, I did. There's only one thing that's on. I've got to wait a bunch of pages.
Okay. So page 681 is the first page from March 12th meeting minutes. So this was a meeting with the capital committee. All the recommendations were reviewed and discussed with Don Essen, capital committee chair. Anything to amend on that first page? Second page, 682. So we're still talking with the capital committee, and it went all the way to 3/4 of the way down that page, and the meeting ended at 8 o'clock. Then we went into old business with subcommittee reports, and in the bottom of that page, other business. Anything to report for an amendment on page 682?
Rick, and that's just one thing halfway down. Mr. Cappy looked at the value of the trade on municipal bid was valued at $58,400. I didn't quote any prices on that. I just said look at the cost of the vehicles or look at the website. I don't know where $5,400 came from, but
Okay, so change this,
Okay.
change this, yeah, change that sentence just to say that
so
Mr. Cafferty suggested that the website municipal bid is a good place to look at values of vehicles. Does that sound right?
yeah, that's fine.
Or however you,
It's the place you have to go.
Huh?
I think it's the place you have to go.
Yeah.
It's the municipal.
okay,
site.
anything else on 682? Okay, page 683, and then there is a short discussion about an override, and about then I raised the information about the short time we have left for meetings, and talked about our missing member, Justin Casanova Davis. Okay. Anything on page 683? All right, then, I will entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from March 12th as amended.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second by Al. All in favor?
Yes?
Oh, Michael says yes. Kathleen?
I'm abstaining because I need
Okay, abstain. Rosemary?
I said yes.
And Al?
Yes.
Oh, we have to say it.
Chuck abstains.
And I vote yes. And John?
Here.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's 2 yeses for you. Okay,
Okay.
so noted.
I would do.
All right, so we got March 19th coming up next for meeting minutes. Page 684 is where it starts. So the meeting started actually with public forum, and Don Byers bringing some information about a grant in just a spelling on safe routes to school. Roots would be the bottom of a tree. Roots would be R-O-U-T-S for this particular application. I pictured a little squirrel running to school with his little book bag running along the bottom of the tree.
R-O-U-T-S?
You did. Roots.
So it'd be R-O-U-T-E.
Safe routes to
That's
school.
really
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was too. I got a kick out of it. So that is on page 684. Anything else anybody finds on page 684?
Way down the bottom, the last line, it says an interest rate. That was probably my miswording. It's the inflation rate that we need to, that was capped.
Okay, the inflation rate was capped. See that? Way at the bottom.
Yeah, it was, I misspoke, that's all.
9 words from the end.
Because I've done it a bunch of times before and I
And
catch it when
rate.
it's slipping out of my,
Inflation rate.
and then I say, I know what I meant,
Like
but
facetious.
it's,
All right, so then on page 685,
oh yeah.
one glaring punctuation mistake in the middle of the page, 685.
It was fictitious.
It says, Ms. Conley suggested speaking more to the community and making information transparent and very clear. She mentioned recently at the beginning of the year when money was returned from the school, a finance committee members with a apostrophe, that's all. Just to clarify that.
Did ask for it to go into free cash,
It
guys.
would be nice to have it there now.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it would. Let me read the sentence again.
Can you do that again?
So anything else on page
I'm just
685?
changing my name to Cassandra, and then just get that over with.
All right, then seeing none, then I will entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from March 19th, 2024 as amended.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Well, voice vote. Al?
Yeah.
Al says yes. Chuck?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Ralph, we're just voting the meeting minutes from March 19th, and you were here.
I'll accept.
Okay, that's a yes from me as well.
Yes. I
Unanimous.
trust everybody else.
Ralph, welcome. John is on the phone, just so you know. All right, so that clears us from 2 of the 4 meeting minutes and public forum. I see Mr. Don Byers is here. Would you like to bring anything to our attention from public forum?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go to new business, and we're going to go to the annual town meeting.
Before you go on to I know I'm not public forum, but I sent a 2 things out quick. Maybe you could share them. The best practices, and it speaks to a grant Ms. Byers had brought in. It's actually under the Massachusetts Best Practices list to do the safe route for the schools right now in terms of money. So I just wanted to mention that. And then I also sent the RAND Corporation's evaluation on how to best utilize your opioid funds, those 15,000. It's really important because I want people to understand. According to the graph and map in Massachusetts and the percentages that I read, Whitman is under the non-reporting part. So whoever we're giving it out to doesn't have to report back if we're going outside of the town, whereas we have to check if the money's being used redundantly, if we could use that within our departments, and make sure that it's meeting its objective, and the objective is outlined in the RAND thing. So I would.
So I think,
That's all. Just
Rosemary, I know, I just want to say, I don't believe I forwarded it to the committee.
Oh,
Did I?
okay. If you-
No.
So I will.
Thank you. Because there's
apologize.
a couple thousand,
So-
15,000.
Safe routes and best practices emails that you sent me.
So this best practices is within the safe safe routes was within the best practices.
And then the other one was about the,
Yes, it's it.
Opioid fund.
So if anybody doesn't know what the RAND Corporation is, the RAND Corporation is out of the U.S. Air Force, and it basically determines, it's one of the best sort of places to get, the military uses it to determine how to best utilize money to serve and expand it. So it's really, really good.
okay, so I'll forward them out so people have them. Okay, so we're at new business here about the annual town meeting warrant. Last week we did distribute a draft town meeting warrant and went over it in detail with the town administrator. It was a good opportunity to have a first pass. Selectmen are meeting tonight. I don't know if they're approving or accepting the warrant. There was another communication from the selectmen posting a meeting for Thursday. It's an online conference on Zoom. And I'll just read the posting. It says this meeting will be held remotely in an online conference mode hosted on zoom.com, and members of the public will not be able to physically attend. However, members of the public who wish to attend remotely may do so. For remote access, please see below. The meeting will be broadcast live on Comcast Channel 6 and also can be viewed via live stream at WHCA TV. And it will subsequently be broadcast on YouTube. So there's a link on the posting for the meeting if anybody wants to attend Thursday. The agenda is simply 3 items: Pledge of Allegiance, Moment of Silence, and new business. And the new business is to vote to place the following questions on the May 18th, 2024 annual town election ballot. And the first is, shall the town of Whitman be allowed to assess an additional $509,212 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding a portion of the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District operating expense assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024? Yes or no? And then, shall the town vote to have its elected treasurer-collector become an appointed treasurer-collector of the town? And yes or no? So those 2 questions are going to be voted by selectmen in this remote access meeting on Thursday. So I think it's important to put that into context of last night's school committee meeting. And since I apologize, I wasn't able to go to the meeting, I'll allow the report maybe to be given by the liaison to the schools. Kathleen, can you give us a little bit of, and you did provide a document. John, did you get the document by email? Kathleen's going to review?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome, John. So I was not able to physically attend the meeting, but I did watch it on WHCA. And it pained me to sit there and listen to parts of the discussion. I actually advocated for the schools to compromise. I feel it's very similar to last year where there's a budget gap and everybody has to be on the same page. We're all one community and all resources of the community should be shared in a way that's equitable. So to their credit, the school committee did vote to cut $910,500 from the operating budget, which translates into a Whitman assessment of $19,135,687, or a 7.87% increase, down from the 11% increase that they had originally requested. However, both the chair and the superintendent talked about putting the rest of the difference between the 5% that is on the town administrator's budgets in both Whitman and Hanson, and the balance, the 19 million, the 14 million. The difference was going to go on an override, which translates into $509,212 for Whitman. The school committee did not vote the override. There was a little discussion by the chair, a lot of discussion by the chair, and input from select person Sean Kane that he thought this was the only way to go and he was 100% for it. I was flabbergasted. I don't believe it's legal. Now I'm editorializing here instead of reporting. I don't believe it is legal for the selectmen to coerce the schools into separating their budget into 2 components, the operating assessment that they submit and then a separate override. I know they did it in fiscal 17. I don't care that they did it in fiscal 17. They weren't following the statutory method back then, were they? And that was illegal. So just because they did it in 17 doesn't mean it was the right thing to do. And I question the legality. Thank you, Ralph. We spent $4 million that Hanson should have paid because leaders who should have known and probably may have known didn't do the right thing, didn't follow the law. So just because someone advised the superintendent and the school committee chair that this could be done does not convince me that it can be done, and I'm looking into the legality with DESI. Can an override be forced on the schools?
Just to support Kathy's statement, in Brockton, the same topic is happening. This is in the news now because when the school committee votes their budget, it goes to the city, and the city's supposed to do just what they asked. And there was a tweaking, and there's some issue there, and it wasn't supposed to happen. And that's sort of what the school committee is saying. This wasn't the budget we voted, therefore this wasn't our budget. Sean Kane brought a best practice, although he wasn't highlighting the section of school funding. In the best practice document he brought in, it states, first you start with your school budget. And the reason is, once that's done, it's done. We get a bill, even if it's not a regional, even if it's a regular school committee. That's what you have to pay. If there was a section that they were growing and that wasn't level service, above and beyond, you would do an override for that. That's where they would say, we'd be willing to not work with this amount. There'd be an override. But they didn't give us the option of the override. But what I'm wondering and I'm hoping is that this meeting tomorrow is about the busing section. That they can, because they have separated it out, possibly do an override for the busing. I mean, I'm hoping the best of our selectmen, that they wouldn't go forward with something highly unethical. That's all.
Well, let me just add just a couple of things
And
to
I'm
the
not
discussion.
finished after you, Rick. I
I'm
want to
so
pick up.
sorry.
Okay, you can continue.
Well, what I'd like to say is this document that I've shared with all members of the Finance Committee was generated by Jeff Simonek on March 19th, and it spells out what it would look like if different levels of budget cuts were implemented. And above the black line, the $910,500, the 4.04% decrease in their overall budget, does not impact the program for the children. It doesn't impact the day-to-day experiences of the students. Once you go below that black line, depending on how much more money you want to cut, and in my opinion, if they're going to say, let's put it on an override, we're looking at the whole shebang. It's not going to be incremental cuts. It's either they get $509,212 or they don't. So we're looking at 20.5 total positions. What absolutely makes me nauseous is that if the need to reduce 15.5 staff members is called for, this is way down the front page. The superintendent's suggestion is that he would cut 3 teachers from Conley, grades 3, 4, and 5. 3 teachers from Duval, grades 3, 4, and 5. Grade 2, he'd cut 1. Grade 2, he'd cut 1. So there's 8 teachers. Then he would cut 2 teachers from Indian Head, grades 3 and 4. 1 from grade 2. Grade 5 is in the middle school. So he would cut 3 teachers from the Hanson Middle School, grade 5, plus 6, 7, and 8. You're talking about classroom teachers. You're not talking about middle management. You're not talking about things behind the curtain. You're not talking about non-mandated busing, which would save the towns $250,000 minimum. And we could have a safe routes to school program in place if someone had the foresight to plan it. But they're talking about classroom teachers for little kids who have experienced COVID, who are just beginning to get back on track. They are thriving thanks to the interventionists and the specialists. I have grandchildren in the system, so I've watched them go from withdrawn and angry to happy and social. And someone last night said we aren't going backwards. We certainly are going backwards if we support this nonsense of going for an override to fund the schools. This is an override increases the taxes on the taxpayers. There's plenty of money in our budget that can fund $509,000 for the schools. Other budgets can be cut. Other areas like capital acquisitions can be postponed until the fall. This is not the only way to solve the budget gap between the schools and the towns. And to say that the towns will vote for an override, I have no faith in Hanson voting a $300,000 override. When's the last time they ever voted an override, unless there were firefighters and police officers at stake? They won't vote for a school override. So it has to be Hanson and Whitman vote for the override, which means this is not going to pass. So it's irresponsible for anyone on in the school system to advocate for this as a solution to the fiscal '25 school budget. It's not a school budget, it's a municipal budget crisis.
Thank you, Kathleen. I think that was very well stated. I just want to add to the discussion as well. I think when we were talking about this impasse for the last couple of weeks, we talked about the possibility that in order to, go forward from an impasse, there's compromise. So the compromise happened last night, and it happened from the school committee. But did the towns compromise? No, they actually doubled down and took the responsibility of that additional funding and put it in a Proposition 2.5 override. To me, that's heads I win, tails you lose, in my mind, right? But it goes bigger than that, and this is why I'm surprised that Selectman Kane, who has been instrumental in drafting language that looks towards our strategic plan and our sustainable budget, we're not doing that with this scenario. We're doing a one-time, ill-placed Band-Aid, right? And trying to fix a problem that goes well beyond one department. I've said this before, that the position we're in is not just the responsibility nor the creation of the school district. Every town department has a stake in what we are looking at now for a deficit. And so I think our skin in the game for the departments is to have an equal compromise to the school committees, going from 11.1% to 7.8%, 7.87%, and saying, well, how are we going to further fund this budget? What are we going to do? So there's, in my mind, this scenario, and I don't think there's any precedence for a finance committee to oppose an override, the Board of Selectmen. And I think this gives me another opportunity to say, I don't think anybody on this board is in disagreement with the fact that the Board of Selectmen, and only the Board of Selectmen, can call for an override. We've been saying right along that an override, an operational override, is what this town needs. For a sustainable budget, it should be looked at not from a one-year fix, but for a 5-year sustainable budget. And unless we're looking at that, for me, an override like this is a hard no. That's all I want to say. So I'll open it up from anybody else. And Dawn, you're here. Do you want to say anything regarding the school committee's vote or the position? Or do you?
I'll add factual information if you didn't see the meeting last night. There were 9 of 10 committee members present and voting. So it was unanimous, 9, to use $250,000 from our E&D, which is our free cash. The balance of that E&D right now is $760,000, so we brought it down to $510,000. Now, Mass General Law says that a regional school, including South Shore Tech, can maintain their E&D up to 5% of their budget. So 5% of 60,000 is $3 million. Of 60 million is $3 million that we could maintain for emergencies or what have you. We have 760,000, and last night we all 9 unanimously agreed to reduce that further to 500,000, which will get reviewed as annually for our future bond rating when we borrow for the approved Whitman Middle School. The other decision of that vote was to use $100,000 in circuit breaker reimbursement we get from the state, which the year we receive it, it should go into its holding account to be used for next year's expenses. We're going to immediately use $100,000, so then now that's $350,000. And then with the recommendation of the superintendent to not fill 5 positions, so it is an elimination of 5 staff members. That's where you get the total of the $910,000 that Kathleen Otina just referenced. So it was a unanimous decision to make that compromise.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying what transpired, Rosemary.
Just a reminder that that circuit breaker money is intended, if anybody understands what circuit breaker, this happened in Brockton. They utilized it before it came in, pretty much before. They didn't have it as the circuit breaker, basically expenses that happen for special ed after the budget is set. That's the amount, is a whole formula to determine the average for the state and what you're most likely going to get. The liability falls back on the town if we don't meet that. That means if a parent litigates, or if something comes in and someone has a massive IEP, or, that isn't handled. Yeah, and,
Well, may I?
yeah, go ahead.
You can also simply have a family that lives in Whitman right now, and their child turns the age of 2 years, 9 months, and they go to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician realizes that child is not speaking, they have low muscle tone, they are not reaching the benchmarks, and that pediatrician says, call your public school. This child needs services. So simply by the age of turning 2 years, 9 months old, they call up, could I have an evaluation? That child's evaluated, that child deserves by law services. The public school has to now hire a teacher at that time. Whether they turned in November, December, February, June, that cost is there.
So that's what the circuit
It's
breaker
not,
is for.
it's not even a family moving in.
That's true.
It's just a child aging.
Aging into that too, or something happens. The child,
Yeah, or
So-
medical
so
complications.
whatever, something happens. But that money is intended for that. That money is statistically determined by the state. There's a 60% of the quantified amount that is a likely amount that could happen
could be
within your,
needed.
could be needed. So it's not like extra money. So when you utilize it, you do exactly what Brockton did.
You're gambling.
You're gambling. You're gambling hard, especially gambling with with our poor E&D, and really there's no protection here. That is our liability. It is not the district's liability. They can sue the town. So it's not smart. It's just not smart. And not to mention the bond rating. It was also the Plymouth County. We're not invested in two different components to our bond rating. We've underinvested there. So borrowing could be a real problem. We're going to pay for it one way or the other.
Okay. So further discussion regarding where we are now. Again, I don't have anything to share with you. I don't have a updated Article 2 that reflects this change of assessment from the schools. We technically should have a reflective balanced budget within Article 2 that we can start taking a look at. So again, selectmen are meeting tonight. I would hope that out of that meeting comes, an opportunity for us to get something where we could start making recommendations. But I guess for the purpose of this meeting, does anybody else have any positions on the override ballot question that has been proposed for a meeting on Thursday?
I'm curious, the attempt at an override versus a debt exclusion for this. They're very different, right, in how they operate. The override would set our new tax limit to whatever the 509 comes out to from a percentage sake. And that's in perpetuity unless we decide to change it up or down later. The debt exclusion would have been a one-time option for us. And if this is a one-time issue, that feels like that would have been a better option.
This is definitely not a one-time thing.
How is it?
Well,
Yeah,
I know,
how
but
is it?
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
from
but that's-
a sustainable budget perspective, adding $500,000 to
Wait a
this
second.
levy is not going to carry us 5 years from now.
Wait a second.
no, and that's the concern. Is
Hold
this is I think you put it well. It's a Band-Aid at this point, but it's not a long-term Band-Aid.
Right, and we keep hearing, Rosemary, can you wait just 1 second? We keep hearing about this, this 5 years from now, this debt is going to fall off for the retirement.
County retirement.
Plymouth County
So
retirement.
we'll hold our breath for 5
We
years.
cannot keep using a small Band-Aid every year for 5 years. It is just not a responsible approach to long-term fiscal management. To me, it's really as clear as that. Rosemary, go ahead.
Thank you. Mike has a point, a really good point. We do have articles before, and I think I should give you a little background on some of the meetings that I attended via Zoom on the STIPS program for Plymouth County. The engineering costs and all of these things could actually be, because these are capital costs and they do have an end date. And not only that, they're reimbursable. Mike, I think we should if we're going to do something, we should be looking at a debt exclusions for anything that we have coming out for that engineering STIP program, and probably extend it out. I think that's
I'm bringing it up just because there are
here.
options.
There are.
I will go back to what Kathleen said too, which is there's, no matter what we do, 2 towns have to agree to this. So I share your belief, Kathleen, on this. I don't think that both towns will buy into it. I think it might be a hard sell for anything at this point, considering what we've spent for, capital expenditures, this between the school, the public works, all needed things, and we are all very aware of this. The VOTEC is looming on the horizon for us. So I think that's a concern, and I think that's a conversation that needs to take place. Is all right, it doesn't take place. Are we at the worst case? What can we do to mitigate the choices that are laid out in this document for us, from looking at other places within our existing budget? If we can't go to the taxpayers for more, what are our options?
Right. So for me, in order to do our compromise, right, we have 3 things we could do. We have we could go back into the Article 2 and responsibly reduce some of these budgets that came in well over expectation, right? I think we have an obligation to the taxpayers to go down that road. So 1/3 of this $500,000 that they're looking for in this operational, the school override, I'm going to call it that again, but I really want to make it clear that I think we all understand there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
So the other third could certainly be gleaned from the 700 and change in capital articles, right? We have to take a look at it. Can we afford these capital articles this year? 1/3 of that amount should be paid from that list. This is why I was pretty adamant with the capital committee that they should be prioritizing these requests so we can modify the total amount that we're going to recommend, and it may not be that what they were looking for. I think there's a good chance that it's not going to be all of the things that the capital committee recommended. So,
Yeah.
so there's ways to make up this budget deficit that don't include, looking at one department to shoulder the burden. Chuck.
Right. Well, I agree with that totally. After hearing all this information, and as it's gone over the years, there's always compromise at the end, but compromise.
Yeah.
Like you said last night, sounds like one did and another didn't. And in the past, we have tried to come together, whether it was using free cash or other stuff. But like you said, owe it to the taxpayers to take a harder look at the other towns' budgets that did come in high and whittle something away. Take a look before you throw that out there to the taxpayers, which, like I said, I believe it might be a hard sell. I didn't think of Mike's idea of a debt exclusion is probably a better sell for people who understand that as maybe just being one time. But the bottom line is it should be looked at. It should be looked at harder here. What's in the Article 2 and all this capital to make that difference up, and not have to put that on as a possible fail anyways of a 2.5.
Can I go to that? I mean, I did a quick look just to see if I was Googling on it. If I don't know what Prop 2.5 is, and et cetera, I'm just a taxpayer, doesn't know any of this stuff, and I see this, what does it mean? And the first thing that comes up, it says, this is a permanent increase in your tax levy.
Right.
It's not a one-time, it's not that's it, and that is enough. Just Googling it, that's the simplest way you can learn something these days, right? But that would be enough to scare, I think, a lot of people right there. I'm permanently changing my tax?
But you know what, Mike?
No.
Yeah.
We need to permanently increase
Yeah.
the levy.
It feels almost
Too much at once.
Well,
But you-
Not like this.
it's like a
No,
little
yeah.
we
there's
need
a
to
lot
make-
of conversation.
There
that
needs
has
to be a
go
better
along.
presentation, and
Not this
at the
Sorry.
beginning, and,
No.
you know, like, not at the end of this whole thing. There needs to be presentation that, with the evidence over the last few years and all these times that we run into this, that, hey, the only way we're gonna get past this is to take that big bite, but it's just gotta be, explained well.
Right.
And at the right time.
Well, I think we talked about it, we've been talking about it since we had our consultant come in, John Madden, and tell us we're only just, not an if, it's a when the town needs to
Yeah.
increase its levy capacity, and we need to do a debt, an override, right? So it's not something that we have been ignoring. I think we talked about the impact of the COVID and the relief money that came in from the state and federal government. It's delayed it, right?
Delayed it, yeah.
But it's the problem with this $500,000 override, right? You talk about increasing forever. Just because we get the $500,000 for the schools in fiscal '24, it goes back to every other department's use the following year. So it's really not in the school's best interest to be going down this road either. And I just want to go to Dawn.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, because Chair, you just brought up the timeline of John Madden back in 2019 on the Budget Override Evaluation Committee, and I sat on that in 2019, and I should have mentioned this last night in the meeting, but at that time it was right before COVID, and he was saying you need an operational override. It was also 2020, 6 months later, when the statutory method was recognized, and by doing so, it alleviated some of the assessment for Whitman, right? Because
Right.
Hanson was now paying their portion. So it relieved Whitman for a short period of time of that override. Madden was saying, you're heading in that direction. And then we also got COVID relief funds for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Today, this budget we voted for school is the real cost of education. It finally recognizes after not using statutory, after COVID relief money, this is the cost. And I think that's what I would hope the town would collectively recognize, that their municipal departments also, that's the cost for the services that citizens have come to expect and enjoy. And those are important as well. And so is this education. So now we see, without COVID money, right, with recognizing the proper statutory assessment, this is the budget. So
Yep,
thank you
good
for
point.
mentioning John Madden back in 2019. We're now, I think we're 5 years removed from that. It sounds strange to say that, but we're almost back at that point. 'Cause
I
here
agree.
we are.
Yep,
Yeah,
very good
it's a
point.
very good evaluation of that.
Rosemary.
Okay. I mentioned that I went into the meeting for the Old Colony. And one of the things that was talked about was our DPW MBTA project. And why was it not on their list? They have not approved our project. They pushed it off. I had some questions on why. They said because it takes up our entire budget for the year, 14 million, that this particular program is meant for like the smaller amounts that we're paying out of the levy. So that, we had some other dialogue. Basically, we haven't ever used it. And he said, well, keep paying into this program. So this brings me back to what Mike said. If we're going to be paying slowly, $14 million slowly, and then crossing our fingers that we're going to get this money back, which maybe we could. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe that should be the debt relief, the override that we're talking about. That's going to be, we could even do a look back, because that's also pulling from this budget, something that we're going to get money back. Now, each year we have paid into this, and this has been quite a bit of money. If we quantified it, we're getting into the multi-millions at this point. That's missing from this budget too. A debt exclusion would regularly be used, and then you'd fund that, and then that money would go back, and you could sort of remedy that, in that, but that's not how we did this. So remember, there are components here pulling from this budget that aren't our spending issues. They're actually our, our funding issues.
So maybe we could bring that to the Board of Selectmen and get them to weigh in on that possibility.
Well, I am also concerned with how we utilize this program in a way that would almost, that could really risk failure. Really risk failure. You know, there was a real, hesitant we're not even out till they're not even considering us at this point till 2029. Like we're not on that loop. He said we could try again next year, but if you think about it, this is all of their money for every town in Plymouth County. They'd have to give it to one town. What's the likelihood of this? And then my question is, why isn't this broken up into the smaller amounts each year? And why haven't we done this over the years like other towns do? These are small amounts like your asphalt. These amounts for this program are the ones that we're sort of paying out of the levy here and there.
Yeah, and don't forget, you're looking at a warrant that's still in the draft form, too,
Yeah,
right?
I don't want to lose the opportunity if possibly we could, because he said there is some, not a lot, but there is some consideration for towns that have never pulled from the program. First of all, it should have never been that we never pulled from this program, but we haven't. So maybe there's some consideration. I don't know, but I think Mike Warner, and I'm glad you said that because I wouldn't have even thought of it. A debt exclusion may be something you consider on that.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on where we are with the fiscal 25 budget process?
Rick, this is John.
John, come in.
Waiting for John.
Just so you know, the selectmen are talking about the revitalization project tonight.
Oh,
The what?
how timely.
Revitalization project.
Yes.
Okay.
Just so you know, I don't have it. I'm not listening to it, but I'm looking at South Ave and all the pictures they've taken. And they're chatting away about redevelopment and what buildings would be involved and whatever. So
Okay.
it'll
So
be
kids are gonna
worth
pay.
taking a look at their meeting tonight on YouTube later.
Okay.
As far as the current budget, and this is one of my questions. I'll have comments, but one of my questions is, do we even have a budget? I know we at one point had a submission that was about $1.1 million over.
I'm sorry, I've done this to you.
And then there was a discussion about how they've cut $1 million from that budget. But did we ever get a copy of what Article 2 looks like
No,
with the $1 million cuts?
No, and just from past practice, we have had multiple Article 2s throughout the budget season, right? So this is no different. But I think what we need now is an Article 2 that reflects the recently voted assessment from the school committee. We need to see where the town is making cuts or not making cuts so that we can make recommendations to town meeting, right? So I think this is where it's not only going to be critical that we finally have internet access in our room so that Kathleen can now update our Article 2 live on her laptop, because if we are going to be in opposition to the selectmen's ballot initiative override question on the warrant, we have to then fill in the entire Article 2 to reflect where we are going to come up with $509,212, right? So to answer your question, no, we don't have an Article 2 in front of us, and that's why this is going to be a short meeting.
You thought it was going to be short.
I needed to be heard.
Famous last words.
Yeah, I know, I've said that before, haven't I?
I think Custer said that too.
Yeah.
What's going on in Brockton. We've been, yes, we've heard a little bit about what the schools have done. Somebody did raise a point that I was going to raise, which is basically if you tack on 500,000 in an override, by the time the schools get their act together next year, sorry, Don,
Thumbs up.
money will be already spent. Some in some of the other departments in the town.
No
Yes.
doubt in my mind.
Yes.
It'll be gobbled up so fast.
Yep.
We'll be back at. Well, the schools are going to have to cut because it's their problem.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
And the thing is that I have said right along that even when we were flush with money and were willing to fund all of the different capital stuff, we needed a priority list over the last several years, but we never got anything.
right. We should have been putting more
We're in the habit
stabilization.
now of just, all right, we like it,
T-shirt.
we'll go for it. Maybe we can't afford it this year.
Right.
So they deferred on a few things, but not to a great degree.
Good point.
The other thing is, as far as, and I've used this song too many times.
You're gonna sing something?
We are not going to sing
Oh, no.
Kumbaya with the Board of Selectmen.
Well, it looks like that's very unlikely at this point. Yes. I mean, we're doing our best for a collaborative effort.
Souls over there that have convinced you that it's a wonderful thing we're doing. We're planning 5 years out. But they're the same people who negotiate incredibly generous contracts, give away trucks like they're candy, and basically put us in a position from the town budget perspective of being in the hole before we even got to the school budget.
Yep. Yeah, you got to make really good points, John. We're all behind you.
Oh, he made these are the same people who said, let's pay for another town's bill by $500,000. That Hanson can't afford it was the statement. A wealthier town can't afford it. The same people.
The compromise.
Is it ironic that
that was not true. I have something that I don't know if anybody's thinking about, but the statement was made that that there was an issue with how we assessed. Now that's where all our money's coming in, guys. So is our levy really our levy? Is there more money out there? Like, has anybody reviewed that yet?
We have a new assessor, so hopefully she will.
No,
take
I'm sure she has, but this is in review, I believe, still. I mean, we haven't gotten anything formally back yet. So is there more money that's not included in this? I mean, I guess I'm having a hard time screaming full-on override. I'm with Mike on the debt exclusion aspect, particularly because we have millions that are supposed to be returned to us already through the project. And I feel like that it's, I guess that's how I feel.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on where we are? Kathleen?
Are we at a point where we might want to take a motion to oppose this school override nonsense?
I think a motion is in order.
Then I make a motion that the Board of, the Finance Committee opposes this approach to closing the budget gap by proposing a school override.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second?
I'll second it.
Ralph seconds. Okay, further discussion. So let me just throw one more thing on the table that I don't think I mentioned, is the fact that if in fact this override was successful and the money came in, would that be less likely for the town to contemplate a subsequent override for a longer term approach at a sustainable budget? And if in fact this was unsuccessful, do you think the town would be reluctant to have another opportunity to vote a Proposition 2.5 override? Either scenario, I think is damning to a long-term approach at sustainable budget, in my mind.
It's not
So-
exactly.
So one of the things that's interesting is many towns that go for this, same thing, Newton did this. They promised no more override for 5 years.
Yeah, see?
Right?
See
So
what it
they
does?
build it into it. So you do this once, we won't come back. But that's a concern here. Is you could do it every year, right? So we're just changing our tax base at that point. That's
Right.
what we're doing.
This is a Band-Aid approach. So we have a motion, further discussion?
I'm not sure. I got to think about it a little bit. So I'd like to hear if there's other people thinking, because I don't know that I have enough.
But you can certainly abstain.
Yeah, I don't know that they've considered other options. Maybe they have, and they said no, and here's why. I feel like I'm not sure that I have enough information to know how much
Well, I
they've done
think
for.
we've been pretty vocal throughout our meetings, and our meetings are not only on, our meeting minutes are published, but our recordings are, out there every week. So
Oh, yeah.
people really know what this committee is thinking on a regular basis.
I think Ms. Byers said something really important. Well, would we be going for an override where we were still subsidizing Hanson? If we still had the, I mean, there has been a large, we are not growing at the rate that we once did, essentially, towards rolling. That was a correction. The total investment in education was Hanson's portion. They show an amount towards education, but the Hanson paying the right amount is kind of what it is. So, I mean, if we had grown at 5%, well, subsidizing Hanson at the same time with our aid, think about where we would be there. So the willingness to pay for another town's taxes.
But that's not what we're doing right now.
No,
That's-
but
yeah.
but they were not asking for it back at the same time.
Good luck getting money back.
You should have started.
That actually is a.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ralph was all for it. He
I was
gonna march
pursuing
over
the
there,
heck
knock
out of
on the door.
Hanson. I was taking them for enough to
Call
pay
me.
all of our
Call
budget.
me.
All right, so understand, this is just more or less an opportunity for us to, let the public know where we stand. I don't necessarily think this is going to be our vote for the recommendation on the warrant. Unless, in fact, that you want to make that recommendation. If, in fact, you wanted to make a recommendation for it to be published in the warrant, it normally is, are you voting in favor of it, right? And usually it's the yeses first and the noes second, right? So,
I don't want to waste municipal money on fake elections and fake ballot questions that we know will fail. It's political theater and wastes public money. It will fail. It will fail, and we know it will fail because it never has. Because it has to go through 3 different elements. It has to be voted at the school, which it already hasn't been. So it already hasn't been. And then we would waste legal money to do what? To produce a patchwork, poorly planned financial path forward? I am not going to participate in that.
here's my take. It will fail even if it passes. That's my...
I would,
Right?
I would agree.
In the long term,
Yeah.
this fails
We need a
on what
better.
we're supposed to be doing.
Before we ask money from the taxpayers, we better have a better plan.
Well, that's where I'm getting stuck.
Yeah, a better plan.
Step one is, as you said, Rick, is we need to go through and find out where do we cut in other departments first. Then maybe it's not this, whatever, maybe it's not 500,000,
Maybe it
maybe
goes
it's
down to
300,000, whatever it is.
300,000, yeah.
But it feels like it's out of order. It's like, we'll just get more money and we'll figure it out afterwards. It should have been, let's just go to everybody else and say, you were told 5%, you gave me 30%. Guess what you're not getting? 25% of that, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Done.
I think the question to be asked is, if 500,000 goes to a ballot question and it's called a school override and it fails, how does the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District assessment change? Because by law, we just voted an assessment last night. How does that change?
The town is adamant that it's going back to 5%.
But
My mind.
I don't know.
I don't know about the legality. Right, I don't
It
either.
goes back to the town
Right.
committee, and they can send it back to us again.
We can vote at town meeting to approve the assessment sent to us by the school department or to reject it.
Right, we don't have the opportunity to
And then we
change
send it
it.
back to the schools and we go
This
back
is
and forth for the 1/12 budget that
Right.
we were threatened with.
Without
We know the
doing,
process.
without
Yeah,
doing
that's
a
the
fake
process.
ballot, without the expense of a fake ballot question, this is what I'm saying. There is a process in which, if we really can't afford it, when we look at all the numbers, this is just not the way to go.
But I think we can afford it. I think we can afford to do our part to
Yep.
compromise. I think, like I said, looking back in the budgets, coming up with a dollar amount that, everybody's got to have a skin in the game,
Yeah.
really. You know what I mean? This is not just one department; it's all our departments. So,
And this is what we're saying. Why go through the expense of an override that really never had to happen, because we could send it back to the schools for free, and then why go through that expense?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
that's not the right way to go. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, so the motion is.
John's trying to say something.
Oh, John, sorry.
A question, and I realize that we are not the legal eagles of Whitman, but we have the schools thinking that they could get seriously whacked if this override does not pass. By the same token, we have the town administrator coming up with library closure, this, that, and the other thing, if an override doesn't pass.
Yeah, well, that was a different override.
Is there an understanding of what actually will happen if this is not voted in the ballot box?
I think we're going back to a legal interpretation at that point. I don't think anybody in this room has the answer to your question.
It's not true. It goes. We got a bill.
No.
What happens if the vote tech? It's the same thing that happens if the vote tech. The vote tech sent them another bill. Are they going to be? Okay, we have one educational pie. So are they asking for all educational? Or are they targeting one school? Because Whitman Hanson came in with the lowest increase. The lowest. And so if we're going to do an override for all educational amounts that increase, the same thing's going to happen. We're still going to pay the bill because it's the same law and the same thing. We're still going to pay the bill that VOTEC sent. We're still going to pay the bill that Aggie sent, and we're still going to pay the bill
All right.
that Whitman Hanson sent.
With the receivership, yes.
Yes, or we go into or we send it back and ask them to do it by less, and then we can go into 1/12, not receivership. It's called something else, but it's a 1/12. It doesn't. It actually is very different. It doesn't affect our EQV. It is a totally
The end result is
the end result.
It is a little different with the vote tech, right?
It's a fiscal oversight. They basically guide you through until you can make a path. So it doesn't have the educational oversight. So it's like just the money. So they distribute your money slowly, and they make you pay for the month each.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay, Kathleen?
The only point I want to reiterate is that I do not believe that we should be asking the taxpayers of Whitman to cough up $500,000 without first, as Rick suggested, looking at the Article 2 and making some cuts there, looking at the capital request, making some cuts there. We're going to have a fall town meeting because the South Shore VOTEC regional agreement has to be amended before they can ever hope to get that building passed. So we'll have another town meeting, and if in the fall there is money left after we do the right thing without asking the taxpayers for $500,000, then we'll fund more capital articles.
Right.
But this is a premature, ridiculous,
Right.
in my opinion, illegal override.
So again, we have three points to fund this $500,000. It is through a review of the Article 2, it is a review of the capital, and it's also looking at, in fact, the town's E&D, which is stabilization, right?
Yep.
And we all agree that spending one-time money for operating costs is not the best fiscal way to do it. But, I mean, look where we are. Rosemary.
We have a bylaw, I believe, that says when we take in aid or grants, we're supposed to hold a percentage back in E&D for any fluctuation in that aid and grant. Since a good chunk of this is happening due to an issue in the state's inflation,
Yes.
Inflation, not interest.
Thank you. I do it every time. Inflation rate, then we should be looking, just like our bylaws say, to offset that amount with that stabilization.
Right. Yeah. So I think everybody is in agreement that, you know, there needs to be more work here. We are charged with making recommendations to town meeting. And although we have no information to begin that process, I think this is a good first step. So we have a motion on the floor. If you are in opposition to this override, then I would ask you to vote
Yes.
yes. If you are in agreement that it should
School
be,
override to the
School override, yes.
Proposed school override.
opposed. Okay, so, all opposed? No.
All
you wanna
in
do-
favor of
okay.
All in
opposing
favor.
the
Yeah, it's a
override.
voice vote anyway.
Oh, we have to go to voice vote, that's correct. Okay,
All in favor of opposing the
School override.
the school override.
okay, in favor of opposing the school override, Ralph,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so it is unanimous. Okay. All right. I think this is a good first step. Like I said, there's really no winners here in this scenario, really. I mean, the town is in a fiscal nightmare, right? But we
It's
know
always
what's
easy to
coming.
point at kids, isn't it?
They're making it a nightmare. It's not a nightmare. It's absolutely solvable if people have a vision for what's the right thing to do and they don't put all of the blame on the back of children.
Yeah. Well, good point.
Hey, Rick,
Said,
Yes,
well
Al.
said.
are you gonna do a press release? A smart way to do it.
I didn't hear you.
A press release.
Press release. Put it in the Whitman Hanson Express.
Yeah.
Kathy's
I noticed
the
this town
outreach
doesn't do
person.
it.
If you choose to do it, I mean, I
Oh, Tracy doesn't cover us anymore because we're not on Zoom.
We're not on Zoom?
no.
No.
Oh.
We're recording,
Oh, our recordings are.
but
yeah.
she doesn't really,
Yeah.
she does a great
Well, I think, let's see what happens for tomorrow night's meeting.
We'll see what they decide.
See
and
what
then
they do.
we'll do our
Maybe they
press
will
release.
recognize the
Maybe,
fact
yeah.
that we're not all on the same page here, and let's have another conversation, perhaps another joint meeting with the select board.
Yep. Can we
We're always
authorize
willing.
the chair to communicate with the Board of Selectmen that we took this vote tonight?
Absolutely.
So moved.
Okay.
Yes.
But
authorize
it
the
doesn't do
chair to
anything.
this
It
matter.
doesn't do anything. What we just did,
Right.
it doesn't do anything.
If it stays in this room,
It's nothing. And no one's gonna listen to that recording.
well, the
Yeah,
town hall
Your
people.
minutes are gonna be coming, what, next week sometime?
We had like
Timely.
23 views.
Yeah, that's what you gotta do if you wanna move something like that.
Okay, all right, I will, I'll send a communication to the Board of Selectmen. Okay?
Two of them from front office.
So I often wonder what would have happened if it had been the other way around, where Hanson had been paying our taxes for a whole bunch of years.
Hanson knows how to.
Would they have given us a free pass, or all of a sudden hit us with a big, big bill?
See, you
How about the
report
best
that
thing?
they'd be
How about
suing
the
us.
That's what I mean.
Millions.
They're still whining about the horrible infliction of pain we caused by making them pay their bill.
Right, and they're a wealthier town than we
Yes,
are.
they are.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's take a look at the agenda and see where we are. ATM warrant Article 2, I think we don't have an update on either one of those, so we'll move on to old business. Subcommittee reports, Capital Committee.
It's meeting this Thursday.
Okay.
I'll have good news to
Can-
report to them.
Can you re-emphasize the need to prioritize all of those?
Absolutely.
Because I think we're really gonna be taking a hard look at
I
that
will
list.
inform them that we, the FinCom, will be taking a hard red pen to anything they forward to us if it's not prioritized, if there hasn't been a 5-year plan, if they haven't done all the things the Capital Committee is supposed to do.
Well, they
haven't
did,
been doing.
so they approved 700 and change, right?
Because they say yes to everything.
But I think, let them know that likely that's gonna be 1/3 of where we're going for the 500,000.
Chief said it
And,
has to be.
and I hope that avenue is looked at instead of just, let's take it all out of capital standard.
I think, yeah, capital stabilization is the last resort.
Yeah, last
That
resort,
we are getting
maybe
back.
50,000, 100,000?
That is accurate. That's a
You don't want to gut the whole account just
No.
for this.
No.
Don't have no rainy day money.
It needs to,
Okay, very good. Whitman Hanson Regional School District Agreement Amendment Committee, nothing there.
I will tell you that that's not going to reconvene until someone sues the school department to implement school busing legally. I watched the March 25th, 2022 meeting between Christine Lynch, Jay Sullivan, Jeff Simonek, and a whole plethora of Whitman people. And Jay and Christine kept saying, you can't do that. You're sending a separate article. That's illegal. You cannot do that. I've made no headway as a member of the Regional Agreement Committee because once I showed Laura Kemit's, Fitzgerald, that Hanson was going to have to pick up another $40,000 to $80,000 if they did it the right way. There hasn't been a meeting called since. Hanson doesn't want to talk about regional agreement amendments because it's going to cost them money.
Right.
So,
But in fairness, that has to be reevaluated.
it absolutely does.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you. If we review the amount of children that went on those buses, were Whitman students counted on the Hanson? Did they do a whole system method? I think that needs to be reviewed, because if that's the case, then Hanson has to make a decision. Did they submit, because it shouldn't have been a whole system with Whitman students counted on their buses. Did they submit a whole system and need to split it 60-40, or did they commit fraud to the state? I mean, that needs to be the question asked, because if they submitted calculating Whitman children over onto those buses, then that's a 60-40
You're
split.
talking about the 75% capacity.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they did a whole
That's
system
beyond my level of addressing at the,
at this,
yeah, I just want the language changed.
yeah,
And if the
I
school
want the money
department
back.
isn't obeying the law, well, that's not my problem, that's Bessie's problem.
Right.
Okay. I mean, in terms of aid to support the
Yeah,
buses,
yeah,
we
yeah.
were, the balance to achieve busing financially was thrown off to where we were paying 80%, and the math behind that seems off. The state gives you money to afford something, right? So if we're paying 80% of that busing, then something's off with that. And so when I reviewed it, I was struck by the whole system method, 75 bus, and the numbers seem to imply that Whitman students were being counted on those other
We're only
buses.
getting 57% of the services, not 80%.
And we were
Because
only
most
getting,
of our kids are non-mandated, so we don't get the reimbursement.
Okay, very
I
good.
watched the February 5th, 2020 school committee meeting where John Tuffy talks about splitting the non-mandated cost 60-40.
oh, yes.
And Frank Lynham gets to the podium and explains to the business manager, Mr. Tuffy, that Whitman elects to pay more. So Whitman elects.
So when
to
did
pay 80%.
Whitman taxpayers elect to pay more for the busing?
And
So
what-
basically, what John Tuppy has demonstrated is what I understand the law to be. The whole system method requires a 60-40 split for the aid. So, and I think I said that to you before that, I was sort of mentioning that, and I brought that to Mr. Lyman at the time as well.
Lynham.
I'm sorry. Again.
That dyslexia catches you.
It always gets me there, but with the word's pronunciation. But if this is the case that it was done this way and the reimbursement, there's a lot of money owed back to either the state of Massachusetts or the town of Whitman.
One or the other, but I agree. Yeah, very good. Okay, middle school building committee, any meetings?
It's progressing beautifully. It's meeting once a month, and I'm just so excited that we passed an override to fund the new Whitman Middle School.
Excellent. Public Works Department, building committee was scheduled to meet yesterday, but apparently the meeting wasn't posted, so it's postponed. So I will give you an update when we get it, I know. And just an update on the special legislation. It is still engrossed in the Senate. Engrossed being a very good adjective in my mind.
Mr. Brady was in the lobby on the way in. He has stated that it will be set by next week.
Okay.
It will pass.
You heard it here
Senate.
first.
I thought he was
It'll
here
pass.
tonight to
It has-
hand deliver.
He was. He said it has passed in the House,
Yep.
and now it will be passed in the Senate.
And be on the governor's desk by next week. All right. Let's see. I could just see a couple of unicorns bringing the green light.
Well, I
letter
did ask.
That ticket was found last night,
I-
so let's go.
It was found last night. So I did ask for a copy of that home rule petition for celebratory reasons in the finance committee, so that we can make sure it's real. You know?
Yeah, we'll post it right up here with
We will
the
post it up.
cry for
Yes,
help
I-
letter from our state rep.
I will.
Okay, so that's it on the audit. We have no updates other than the fact that that's still on hold and pause. Anybody else want to chime in on the fiscal 25 budget? I guess really have waited. We have to wait till we have more information, I guess. So we already went over the upcoming meetings. Does anybody have anything to bring up on to go to the order?
Can I ask that we ask the DPW, look at you, knock it off. Can we ask the DPW for a total amount spent on the MBT, that corridor, the project they're looking there, so that we can possibly look into that really great idea that Mike had for just a debt exclusion for that project, knowing that that has a large possibility of being reimbursed back to the taxpayer, and creating, maybe we'll use that money to then go and start the fire station or something. Yeah, do an underride.
Roll it back.
Do something different, guys. Do something different.
All right, very good. Thank you. I will follow up on that. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, third.
Okay, we're gonna have a roll call vote. We're gonna start with John Noon. John?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Mike?
You.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes?
Al?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming. I told it to be a short meeting.